Hey everybody, I'm Tal Gluck, and welcome to the third episode of the State of Docs podcast. In this episode, I talked with Fabrizio Ferri. Fabrizio is a principal technical writer at Elastic, and his blog, Passo.uno, has some of the most articulate, thoughtful, and reasonable writing about documentation and the technical writing field today. He's really well known, and for very good reason, being a writer who writes well about writing. I wasn't able to interview Fabri for the State of Docs report, and so he was kind enough to sit down with me a few weeks ago to chat about how things are changing and what we can do to stay relevant and up to date as the work evolves. It's a wide ranging, clear eyed, and ultimately hopeful conversation, and I got a ton out of it. I think you will too. Let's get into it.
So I'm Fabrizio Ferri. You can call me Fabri. Everybody calls me Fabri. And I work as a principal technical writer at Elastic. As how I got here in the sense of as a technical writer, I guess. Well, I started as a writer in tech around 2008, different positions. Started as a content editor, and then I landed on technical writing in 2016. And here I am. It's been quite a journey.
What's on your mind most lately about technical writing, either as technical writing or documentation?
As of late, the thing that keeps me wakes me up at night, sometimes, not always, is the role of the human in documentation. So where the human in the loop or the human in the middle, however you want to call them, what is the value that we can bring to the process, where we should interface with whatever contraption or system that we set up that produce documentation using AI, which seems quite inevitable. So that's currently my main focus.
Can you describe a little bit about what is the role or what are some of the different purposes of documentation today? Also, how has that changed? Because I know things are changing quite a lot.
So, of course, documentation is gonna be read by humans and machines for quite some time, but we see an increase in documentation consumption by machines, by LLMs. And there might be a moment where the kind of content we produce for machines differs from the kind of content we produce for humans. And not just in terms of the tone or structure, but even just the goal. And I was having this conversation with engineers this morning, and they show me like samples of open source projects where documentation is mainly sample code, which is the kind of thing like very self-contained, isolated, self-sustaining paragraphs. So the kind of things that an LLM will process because the LLM doesn't really care about the scaffolding or the narrative arc sometimes. So it seems to me that there's a future where the procedural documentation can largely be almost executable, like a skill or something that supports a skill, or just encyclopedia of reference documentation with lots of code samples. And the machine is meant to make use of that in a much more efficient way than a human. But then also, the humans needs the opinion of another human. So I think the other part is taste, is like an opinionated take on, look, these are all the pieces at your disposal to do things with LLMs. But then, of course, you need intent, and you need like an overall knowledge of the system. And that's where high-level conceptual documentation, which perhaps is the one that I enjoy the most writing as a technical writer, is the one that humans perhaps will consume more in the future.
Yeah. When I had chatted with Zachary Carey for the report, and we were kind of circling on this definition of like, okay, how is the role changing? What are the different functions that are changing? And one place where I don't want to say we landed, and of course, I think everything is changing a lot, but this idea of the technical writer, well, there's the maintenance of accuracy. Like, I think that's a function. But then there's also kind of creating the narrative within the product. So it's like, okay, you have feature A, feature B, feature C. Here's how you connect between them. Whereas like if you have an agent writing docs based off of a pull request, it's only going to pull the docs for product A, feature A. So a technical writer should be able to bridge across them. But then there's also this like external narrative of if I come to Claude and I say, hey, I want to build X, Claude needs to be able to make the connection that X is going to require Elastic, is going to require a database. Maybe I say I need a database, Claude needs to be able to know which one to suggest. Maybe I don't even know that I need a database. Claude needs to know that I need a database and then that database. And so it's kind of like there's the accuracy, there's the internal narrative, and there's the external narrative. I don't know. I'm curious what you make of that.
It's interesting because we tend to underestimate the value of glue in the sense of something that connects the juicy parts. But if you think of a brain, you have the gray cells, the gray matter, and then you have the white matter. White matter is the glue, is the astrocytes, is the sorry, I majored in psychology, so that's why I bring it up. But essentially, you cannot have a full functioning brain without that connective part that scaffolds all the neurons and all the knowledge that you store in the system. And I like to see the context engineer or the knowledge manager or whatever role you want to call the future role that we're going to have as someone who connects the dots and connects those islands of competence and knowledge together. Mm-hmm. And I think a machine can assist with that, but I don't think a machine can come up with the really meaningful connections because it doesn't have meaning, it doesn't have the capacity of processing or producing meaning. That's on the human. So that's where I'm gravitating towards is that search of the meaning of what we're doing, right? It's not the chores, those we're going to drop. It's not the reference parts. This is all stuff that we were trying to automate anyway before. So now it's happening, and it's funny because writers are like, well, am I out of work now? Well, I mean, this would have happened eventually, the automation, but you should have thought about the other part, like how would I create meaning? And now is our time to do that.
Yeah, no, and you allude to this in your piece where it's not about the writing. Like technical writing is like the writing is just kind of the small tip of the iceberg. And this has been coming up in so many conversations. It's like, yeah, text is cheap. It's really easy to generate, but knowing what the text should be, knowing how to structure it, and knowing where to get the knowledge to inform it, I think is the big thing.
Indeed.
The industry is changing, and therefore the role is changing, and therefore this is how technical writers can adapt or must adapt or should adapt. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. I think in general, I don't think a change in the job name is necessary, but the job description is already evolving, is already changing. I think the technical writers, starting from now, need to have like solid system thinking. I think that's a core skill, really, is the ability to connect the dots and the ability to architect systems that ensure content delivery to either LLMs or humans. They need to be tinkerers. And yesterday I was talking with a fellow technical writer, and we had like this conversation about should technical writing have done things differently, like did we fail or whatever. But I think we should have, my answer was we should have gotten nerdier earlier. And now is the time to get nerdier in the sense of digging into these technologies and really try to get into the same mindset as the engineers. Also because the line is blurring. The line is really blurring, and now it's more a matter of intent and taste and sometimes, like, of course, previous experience more than like, do you know to code or not? That question made sense 3 years ago. Now it no longer makes that much sense. Now the question is, what do you want to focus on, or what do you care about? And it's important that we distribute the care in a way that makes sense also within the teams.
Yeah. And why are technical writers particularly well situated for this?
First of all, because we have command of language, and language in the end is all we do in information technology, whether you want it or not, with different levels of abstraction. Some of the language is going to be compiled by a machine. Some other language will be processed by humans, but we are the ones who command the language that matters the most, which is the human one, which sounds a bit poetic, but in the end is the language we use to command LLMs to do things. So I strongly believe that it's an asset in the current moment to have this command of language. What we might miss sometimes is the will or the interest, and that is perhaps our weakest point right now is this.
Could you say more about that? What do you mean by will and interest here?
Like, not all people who got into technical writing probably wanted to or predicted that they would have to evolve to something else, which is entirely reasonable. But I noticed that sometimes technical writers tend to lament the fact that they have to. And even if they have command of a very powerful tool, which is language, if they don't want to change their ways, if they don't want to seek new ways of doing things, but that applies to all professions really. Right now, it's very hard to move forward.
Yeah. Okay. In your piece on the augmented technical writer in 2030, like I think you paint a really interesting picture. Could you describe that a little bit? What you're imagining or what you've imagined that would look like? And maybe and things move
Well,
quickly.
it's
I know you wrote it a
yeah.
couple months ago. Maybe it's already out of date.
No, I think it mostly still applies in the sense of what I'm hoping for is for a model where, first of all, you work in a sort of regulated environment where you know what are the things you can do, because that's quite unclear right now. Like I think we are living in a rogue moment right now where everybody does everything and we don't really care about legal consequences or whatever, right? We're exploring. It's an age of exploration. And eventually, my hope is that the age of exploration will usher an age of stability, where these tools become like second nature, and we can go and pick a model in a store. We can download it to our machine. So we know the pedigree, we know where it comes from, we know how reliable it is. And then we use that model on a daily basis to augment our skills. And then consumers of information can know where that information comes from, maybe the amount of AI processing it went through, like a lot more transparency. That's one of the things that I would like to see. And also, I'm expecting a better UX. Right now, it's almost on us to create a UX around AI usage, which is not fair, in my opinion. I'm expecting that the models we're going to use and the applications we're going to use to query AI will have like better safeguards, will protect us also against misuse. And it has a right in the post, even to the point of caring about us. Like right now, if you are coding in an LLM, you can get lost very easily in hours and hours of conversations going nowhere. I would love it if an LLM just stopped and said, "You look tired, Fabri. Don't you want to take a break? Maybe we should take a break." Think about it more like a more human model of interaction. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really appreciated the piece and the LLM asking you to take a break. Also, the mandate of like there needs to be a certain amount of human in this process. But also, it feels like we're far away from that type of regulation or that type of humanism, maybe. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on what we can do kind of at this level to start to work toward that.
I think some of this will be like inevitable, and I think the players out there that figure out like a better model are the ones that are gonna win. My secret hope is that Apple will do AI the right way, the Apple way, like the humanists in tech way. But just that's just my personal preference. There might be other actors that do that. In the meantime, I think technical writers can play a big role in developing tools and methods and guidelines to make that work like feel more friendly to humans and human workflows. Like, for example, an example could be like developing a different harness for LLMs just for technical writing around like principles of technical writing that we care about, or even refusing to do things that we think are like a red line. But that's just an example. I think the more such artifacts and thoughts and opinions we bring out to the world, the better.
Mm-hmm. Well, just curious, what would you imagine a harness design for technical writers? What sorts of things would it seek to do or seek to specifically not do?
I would expect a harness for technical writers to like refuse to work without a style guide, for example, to adhere to a style guide in a much faithful way than your current harnesses do, to have some sort of built-in care for certain aspects of the craft, like clarity, like the chunking of information, structural concerns, etc. So perhaps it's not just in harness; it could be like a fine-tuned model, or even a model trained from scratch. And it's one of the things that I'm predicting in the post is like we will have models maybe just for tasks like technical writing. And I think we will work on documentation. We will fire up that model. If we were working on coding, we will have like a more specialized models. So specialized and local models, I think, are the way forward.
And then when we opened the conversation, you said that the thing that is keeping you from sleeping sometimes is this like human in the loop flow. So I'm curious, where are humans necessary? Where will humans remain necessary? Where can more of the job be automated away to LLMs or to other forms of tooling?
I think humans are necessary as the curators and coordinators of content creation. I don't think authorship is going to go away, but I think it's going to become like more valuable. Like when a reader is going to find like the human written nugget in AI generated documentation, they're going to value it so much more. And I think only writers can do that. And the fact that Anthropic recently posted a job offer for a copywriter that must not use AI tools to write, I think speaks volumes of the value of pure human writing. So that's where the sell could happen is like, look, we can create documentation through LLMs. I can coordinate that. And then I can add like the very valuable nuggets that will hold it all together, and a machine is not able to do that.
Yeah. And then when thinking about writing documentation for LLMs, you alluded to this a little bit, this idea that there might be totally separate documentation streams. What are you doing today? Like, how do you consider that split today with the work that you do between human and non-human?
Yeah, we are still thinking about it. I think we are still in like the very early stages of this. And I'm seeing documentation in the wild that cater only to machines and not so much to humans. And then you have like paywalled documentation for paywall solutions that cater only to humans, of course. So, but it makes me kind of sad to see this divide. Like, if you're not into a paywall solution, you will only, browse a sea of slop or whatever. I think the human writing should still be out there. And maybe we should just make it like more easily recognizable, I think.
Yeah, well, and I would say that if if LLMs are going to be consuming the documentation, it's also really important for humans to write it, or you wind up with the feedback loop, like the garbage in, garbage out feedback loop. But I guess I'm wondering, like, how should humans think about writing that documentation or structuring it maybe differently between the two?
Well, it's funny because technical writing has always been about the luck of the writer as a person. Like technical writing has always been seen as very dry and impersonal and devoid of authorship. Well, maybe we might have to turn the cards a bit. And in the past years, I think if we learn something from DevRel, is the fact that a personal voice really matters. So I think we have like a joint interest, DevRels and technical writers, in that sense of, let's bring a very human voice, opinionated, with a name, with a face, to documentation. And then we can maybe assume that the rest might be partially written by AI or entirely written by AI, but the humans are there. There are humans you can go to.
I'm almost at the end of my list of questions, but something I'm curious, it's the career advice question. And so it's kind of in two parts. I think one of them, I asked this a bit before, but just to dig into it again, for people, technical writers who are currently employed, I've spoke with a lot of people who I think they're employed, but they're nervous, they're anxious, they feel like
Yeah.
their organization doesn't appreciate documentation. So I think part of it is how can those people, what can they do to really advocate and sell the value of documentation, particularly now, to their organization? And then I think on the flip side, it's people who are not employed, what can they do to learn the right skills and better represent themselves as they're maybe applying for work?
Um, it's a very tough question, and I wish I had like a silver bullet for this one, but what I can say is that for both groups, what matters right now is to show, if you are in a company, to show with data and to show with examples the kind of things we can do together, humans and machines, compared to just machines. So there's the need, I think, for more comparisons between the kind of artifacts you can do with and without humans, inevitably. It's better if you have metrics to back it up, right? Because unfortunately, I don't think the appeal to humanism is enough in this age. But also, we are talking also not just about the impact, but also about the efficiency. So, like, what are the efficiency gains? Like, how much documentation you can coordinate and how much throughput you have compared to systems where you don't have LLMs, right? And for technical writers who are not currently employed, I would say find novel ways, find interesting ways that maybe a company would not allow you to do, to combine both human and LLM produced documentation. Because I think that's really what I would look for in a portfolio is this combination. Like, how well are you carbon and iron, as Isaac Asimov said once,
Is there anything else that is worth mentioning that's been on your mind about documentation or technical writing?
The only thing or reminder I would tell folks is that everybody is a beginner. Like, don't feel, the fear of missing out is real. Don't feel bad about, the pace of change or not being able to keep up with everything. Sometimes it feels like, you take 2 weeks off, you return and everything changed. That happens, but it's not the end of the world. Like, everybody is learning at their own rhythm, and that's totally fine. Don't feel bad about it.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to chat. Yeah, this is great.
Thank you, Tal. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.